They say that history is written by the victors, but the true history, the one that keeps the architects of our world awake at night, is rarely written at all. Instead, it is buried. It is sealed in lead-lined canisters, hidden beneath miles of desert sand, or scrubbed from the digital record until nothing remains but a whisper in the dark. But every so often, the static clears, a file is misplaced, a whistleblower grows a conscience. Or, as in the case we are exploring today, a recording surfaces that was never, under any circumstances, meant to be heard by human ears. Welcome to Chronicle Nexus. Today, we are stepping into the shadows of the late 20th century to uncover the harrowing truth behind what has become known in certain clandestine circles as the Project Kronos files. This isn't just a story of a failed experiment. It is a glimpse into a terrifying breach of the natural order, a moment when humanity reached for the power of the gods and realized too late that something was reaching back. The story begins not with a bang, but with a hum. In the summer of 1994, a routine clearing of a decommissioned Cold War-era bunker in the remote reaches of the Nevada desert led to a discovery that should have been incinerated decades ago. Among the rusted filing cabinets and obsolete mainframe parts sat a single unmarked magnetic tape reel, preserved in a vacuum-sealed titanium box. There were no labels, no dates, only a stamped serial number that officially did not exist in any government database, Kronos-01-B. When independent researchers finally bypassed the encryption and stabilized the decaying audio, what they found wasn't a military briefing or a weapons test log. It was a descent into madness. Project Kronos was, according to these recovered fragments, a black-budget initiative funded by a multinational conglomerate with ties to the highest echelons of the Department of Defense. Its goal, the manipulation of temporal dissonance. They weren't just trying to see the future, they were trying to fold time itself. To understand the weight of the Project Kronos files, we must first look at the man at the center of the storm, Dr. Alastair Thorne. A disgraced theoretical physicist who vanished from public life in 1978, Thorne was a man obsessed with the idea that time was not a river, but a fabric that could be cut and restitched. In his journals, which were leaked alongside the recording, he wrote, "We are prisoners of the present, shackled to a linear progression that is as artificial as it is limiting. Kronos is the key to the cell door." The recording begins with the voice of Dr. Thorne. The audio is thick with the hiss of age, but his tone is unmistakable. It is the sound of a man who has moved past fear into a state of cold, clinical detachment. He describes the event horizon of the experiment, a localized field where the laws of physics as we understand them simply cease to function. Test subject 402 is prepared. Thorne's voice crackles over the tape. The chronal chamber is stabilized at 0.004 Hz. We are observing the first signs of spatial blurring. The air inside the chamber, it looks like liquid glass. As we listen to these files here on Chronicle Nexus, it becomes clear that Project Kronos was moving at a pace that disregarded all ethical boundaries. Subject 402 wasn't a volunteer. He was a John Doe, a man with no record, no family, and no one to miss him when he was stepped into the machine. The recording captures the sound of the machine powering up, a low-frequency thrum that vibrates in the chest of the listener, even decades later. It is a sound that feels wrong, a sound that resonates with the primal part of the human brain that screams at us to run. But they didn't run. They watched. According to the logs, for the first 3 minutes, the experiment was a resounding success. Subject 402 remained visible, though his movements appeared to be happening at different speeds simultaneously. He would lift a hand,
and the hand would appear in 5 different places at once, a trailing ghost of motion that defied the camera's ability to capture it.
Thorne's voice on the tape grows excited, almost manic. He claims they have achieved the static state, a point where the subject exists outside the flow of time. Then the hum changed. The audio on the Kronos 01B tape shifts from a mechanical drone to something more organic, a wet, tearing sound, followed by a series of rhythmic thuds that sound like a heartbeat amplified through a stadium sound system. On the recording, you can hear the technicians in the background beginning to panic. They shout about leakage and biological interference. Thorne, however, remains eerily silent. "Look at his eyes," Thorne finally whispers. It is the most chilling line in the entire transcript. He isn't looking at us anymore. He's looking at everything else. What did Subject 402 see? The Project Kronos files suggest that when you break the seal of time, you aren't just opening a window. You are removing the walls of a house in the middle of a hurricane. The classified science experiment wasn't just about moving through years. It was about the realization that time is a barrier, meant to protect us from things that live in the gaps between seconds. The recording continues for another 12 minutes, most of it consisting of high-pitched feedback and what sounds like someone weeping in a language that doesn't exist. When the emergency shutoff was finally triggered, the chamber was empty. Subject 402 didn't just die, he was erased. But he left something behind. The sensors inside the room recorded a massive spike in negative mass. And the walls of the reinforced steel chamber were found to be covered in a fine crystalline dust that, when analyzed, shared the same isotopic signature as stars that died billions of years ago. This is where the official story, or what little of it exists, ends. The bunker was sealed, the scientists were reassigned or retired, and Project Kronos was buried under a mountain of not-found errors. But the tape remained. As we dive deeper into this recording here on Chronicle Nexus, we have to ask ourselves, why was this preserved? If the experiment was a disaster, why keep the evidence? Some theorists suggest that the recording itself is a trap, a piece of temporal debris that carries with it the same dissonance that claimed Subject 402. Others believe it was a warning left by a faction within the project who realized that Dr. Thorne hadn't failed. He had succeeded. He had opened the door, and the recording is the only proof we have that the door is still slightly ajar. In the next segment of this file, we will examine the recovered visual frames associated with this audio. Images so distorted and disturbing that they were classified as cognitohazards by the intelligence agencies that tried to suppress them. We will look at the final words of Dr. Thorne before his disappearance, and the strange signals that began appearing on global radio frequencies exactly 40 years to the second after the Kronos experiment was terminated. The deeper we go into the Chronicle Nexus archives, the more we realize that the past isn't behind us. It's right beneath our feet, waiting for the right frequency to wake up. Stay focused. The static is about to get much louder. This is the beginning of the end of what we thought we knew about reality. This is the Project Kronos incident. To understand the sheer magnitude of the Project Kronos incident, we must first look at the facility where it all began. A place omitted from every declassified map and erased from every geological survey of the late 20th century. Deep within the Appalachian Mountains, hidden beneath 300 feet of reinforced lead and granite, sat Site 9. This wasn't just a laboratory, it was a tomb built for a secret that defied the laws of physics. The recording we are analyzing today was recovered from the ruins of Site 9. Found inside a safe that had been fused shut by a heat source that shouldn't have existed in our dimension.
The Project Kronos files describe the primary objective not as time travel in the traditional sense, but as temporal synchronization. The lead scientist, Dr. Eris Thorne, theorized that time wasn't a river flowing in one direction, but a massive layered broadcast. According to his notes, everything that has ever happened and everything that will ever happen is currently being transmitted on a frequency just out of reach of human perception. Project Kronos was designed to build the tuner, a machine capable of aligning the human consciousness with these hidden frequencies. They called the device the Kronos array. In the first few minutes of the recovered audio, the atmosphere is clinical, almost boring. You can hear the hum of massive cooling fans and the rhythmic clicking of Geiger counters. Dr. Thorne's voice is steady, reciting the standard pre-flight checklist. But then, as the array begins to cycle up to 85% power, the audio begins to warp. It isn't just static, it's the sound of voices overlapping, thousands of them. It sounds like a crowded stadium where everyone is whispering a different secret at the exact same time. This is what Thorne called the white noise of history. The experiment was never meant to go this far. The protocol stated that if the temporal shear exceeded a certain threshold, the array was to be shut down immediately. But the recording reveals that the off switch no longer functioned. The energy being generated wasn't coming from the facility's power grid anymore. It was being drawn from the fabric of space-time itself. Thorne's voice on the tape shifts from scientific curiosity to absolute terror. He begins to scream about the watchers at the window. He describes entities standing just outside the periphery of the light, beings that don't have faces, but rather voids where a life should be. These watchers are a recurring theme in the classified Kronos files. The military observers present at Site 9 documented seeing tall, translucent figures standing in the corners of the room, completely motionless. They weren't ghosts, they were temporal anomalies, glitches in the reality stream caused by the Kronos array's interference. The files suggest that by trying to listen to the frequency of time, the Project Kronos team had accidentally invited something from the outside to listen back. The recording then takes a turn into the truly bizarre. For a period of 6 minutes, the audio becomes a rhythmic, pulsing tone. Analysis of this tone by modern cryptographers suggests it isn't noise at all, but a massive amount of data compressed into a sound wave. It contains coordinates, chemical formulas, and what appear to be biological blueprints. It's as if the machine was downloading information from a different version of Earth. Dr. Thorne can be heard in the background, no longer screaming, but laughing, a hollow, broken sound. He mutters, "It's not a loop, it's a spiral. We've been here 1,000 times, and we've never left." This brings us to the October 14th protocol. When the government realized they couldn't stop the experiment, they didn't try to save the staff. They didn't try to vent the chamber. Instead, they initiated a total biological and physical erasure. They triggered a series of thermobaric charges designed to collapse the facility into the mountain, effectively burying the anomaly. But as we know from the signals appearing on radio frequencies 40 years later, you can't bury time. You can't blow up a hole in reality. The data logs recovered alongside the recording mention something called the resident. This wasn't a person, but a consciousness that the array had successfully tuned into. According to the redacted notes, the resident claimed to be the collective memory of a civilization that had already ended, existing in the static between seconds. They weren't trying to communicate, they were trying to find a way back into a physical form. The recording ends with a sound that still haunts the few investigators who have heard it in its entirety, the sound of a heartbeat. Not a human heartbeat, but a slow tectonic thrum that seems to vibrate the very ground. Why was this recording suppressed for 4 decades? Because it proves that the laws of physics we rely on are merely a thin veil. The Project Kronos incident suggests that our reality is being projected onto a specific frequency, and that frequency is failing. The signals being picked up today aren't just random interference, they are the continuation of Dr. Thorne's final transmission. They are the echoes of a project that didn't just fail, it shattered the clock. As we move deeper into the technical breakdown of the Chronicle Nexus files, we have to ask ourselves, if the recording was never meant to be found, who left it for us? And why does the voice of Dr. Thorne, recorded 40 years ago, seem to be responding to events that are happening in our present day? The static is getting louder, and the voices in the recording are no longer whispering. They are calling out, and they are using our names. The next segment of these files delves into the physical remnants of the Kronos array, the artifacts that were smuggled out of Site 9 before the collapse. These objects don't behave according to the laws of gravity or thermodynamics, and they provide the final, terrifying piece of the puzzle.
We are about to look at the recovered artifacts of Site 9 and the terrifying realization that Project Kronos didn't end in 1984.
It's just reaching its peak now. Hold your breath. We are crossing the event horizon. The objects recovered from the scorched remains of Site 9 were never meant to be handled by human hands, certainly not without the heavy containment protocols of the original Project Kronos. When the facility underwent what the government officially termed a subterranean structural failure in the autumn of 1984, they claimed everything was buried under 200 feet of reinforced concrete. They were lying. These artifacts, smuggled out by a handful of defecting scientists who realized the horror of what they had birthed, defy every known law of physics. Take, for instance, item 77 Delta, colloquially known among the survivors as the Glass of Echoes. It appears to be a simple shard of high-grade obsidian, but its mass fluctuates depending on the time of day. In the morning, it weighs exactly 4 ounces. By midnight, it weighs nearly 40 pounds, as if it is absorbing the weight of the hours past. But the physical weight is the least of its anomalies. When viewed through a high-speed camera, the reflection in the glass doesn't show the observer. It shows the room as it was exactly 6 minutes into the future. It is a window into a predetermined reality, and those who have looked into it for too long report a crushing sense of fatalism, a realization that their movements are already written in the fabric of the cosmos. Then there is the perpetual locket, found in the personal locker of lead researcher Dr. Eris Thorne. The locket contains a photograph of a young woman. However, the woman in the photo ages. Since 1984, she has transitioned from a teenager to a middle-aged woman, and now to an elderly lady on the verge of death. There is no record of this woman ever existing in the census. She is a ghost of a timeline that Project Kronos accidentally erased. A daughter who was never born because her father was erased from the timeline during the first test of the array. These artifacts are not just items, they are leaks. They are holes in the bucket of our reality, and the water is running out. But to understand why these objects are so dangerous, we have to look at the temporal drift disease that afflicted the recovery teams. Those who spent more than an hour near the Kronos array's core didn't just get sick, they became desynchronized. They would speak, but their voices would be heard seconds before their mouths moved. They would reach for a cup of coffee, but their hands would pass through it as if it were a holographic projection, only for the cup to shatter a moment later. They were losing their now. They were being dragged into the wake of Project Kronos, pulled toward a destination that doesn't exist on any map. The most terrifying revelation found within the decrypted Kronos files is the truth about the 1984 collapse. For decades, we believed the experiment failed, that the machine exploded and the project was shuttered. The final logs tell a different story. The machine didn't explode, it succeeded. The Kronos array didn't just punch a hole in time, it anchored itself to the year 1984 as a permanent safe point for human consciousness. The scientists realized that they hadn't just built a time machine, they had built a loop. Every time humanity reaches a certain point of technological advancement or global catastrophe, the array triggers a reset. We are living in a recurring cycle, a simulated extension of a timeline that should have ended decades ago. This is why the artifacts are reacting now. This is why the glass of echoes is showing more violent futures. We are reaching the end of the current cycle. The peak that the files warned about isn't a peak of progress, it's the peak of the tension before the snap. Project Kronos is no longer a hidden experiment in a desert bunker. It has evolved. In the late 90s, the remnants of the project were absorbed into the Shadow infrastructure, a network of private aerospace firms and data mining giants. They aren't trying to stop the loop. They are trying to control who gets to remember it. They are looking for the static-born, individuals whose DNA was subtly altered by the 1984 event, granting them the ability to retain memories across the reset. If you've ever experienced déjà vu so strong it made you nauseous, or if you have memories of a childhood home that your parents insist never existed, you might be one of them. You are a living artifact of Site 9. The recording you are listening to right now, the one that was never meant to be found, wasn't leaked by a whistleblower. It was programmed to activate. The Kronos files are a trigger mechanism. By observing this information, by understanding the nature of the array, you are being indexed. Your consciousness is being tagged by the very system the files describe. The experiment isn't over. You are the final phase of Project Kronos. You are the observer that collapses the wave function. As we look at the final images recovered from the deep storage drives of Site 9, we see a silhouette standing in the center of the Kronos array as the facility begins to dissolve into white light. That figure isn't Dr. Thorne. It isn't any of the known researchers. It is a figure that looks remarkably like a modern human, dressed in modern clothes, holding a device that didn't exist in 1984. The past and the future have folded in on themselves. The event horizon is no longer in front of us. It is beneath our feet. We are living in the echo of Site 9. The laws of gravity and thermodynamics are beginning to fray at the edges because the system is running out of memory. The glitches in our world, the Mandela effects, the atmospheric anomalies, the unexplained disappearances, are the symptoms of a 1984 technology trying to run a 2024 world. The collapse isn't coming. It's been happening for 40 years. Hold on to your memories. They are the only things that aren't property of the project. If you wake up tomorrow and the world feels slightly different, if the sun seems a different shade of yellow, or the stars have shifted an inch to the left, know that the loop has reset. And know that we will be here, in the next cycle, trying to find these files all over again. This has been a deep dive into the darkest corners of the Project Kronos files. The truth is often a burden, but it is the only thing that keeps us anchored to what is real. If you found yourself questioning the nature of your reality, or if these files have triggered something in your own memory, you are not alone. There are more classified truths to uncover, more hidden histories to unearth, and more secrets that they never wanted you to see. If you want to stay ahead of the loop and join our growing collective of truth seekers, you need to be part of the Nexus. This is where we piece together the fragments they tried to bury. Make sure to subscribe to Chronicle Nexus and hit that notification bell. We are uploading the remaining fragments of the Site-9 logs as we speak, and you won't want to miss what we found in the deep space transmission files. Like this video to help us bypass the algorithms that are designed to keep these files hidden.
The more people who see this, the harder it is for them to hit the reset button.
Thank you for watching. Stay vigilant. Keep questioning. And remember, the recording was never meant to be found, but now that you've heard it, you can never go back. This is Chronicle Nexus, signing off, for now. See you in the next timeline.